little wire brush on one side and a little pokey guy on the other side, to help either clean out your stud holes or get your plugs in and out. So you always want to have one of these. I also always keep a hook pick in my stud kit, and for cleaning studs and stuff, just a little wire brush, again, just at like Walmart or something. For cleaning studs, WD-40 for cleaning studs, and then when you're organizing your studs and stuff, a magnet plate, so you'll get your studs out, the ones you're going to use, and we'll talk about all that. And you'll also need stud plugs. There's different types of plugs. I personally use the foam ones. They're just little foam plugs that you just get them in and out. We'll show you all that in a little bit. Do you have one of the plastic ones? Just another type of stud plug. These ones are just like they're rubber and reusable stud plugs. So it's just kind of personal preference. Other people use, and I don't think we have any cotton plugs. You can just use like little cotton balls that you put in. I also have, wait, there's this. Just another thing you don't really use. Again, an old school thing, and I don't know why I still have it. They're metal little stud plugs. You don't want to use these. They can get rusted in, stuck in your stud holes. They can get stripped. They can strip your tap. You take them in and out with an Allen wrench, and if that strips, then again, like Natalie said, you're at a show and all of a sudden you can't get it out. You can't get your stud in, and you're frantically looking for a farrier to help you with that. And then the other thing is, and you can see like in that one, and you're welcome to come up and look at any of our kits that we have up here, but as far as your stud kit, you'll slowly acquire a lot of different studs. Keep them organized. It's easy that you're not frantically trying to look for a stud when you're at an event and in a hurry or anything. So that's where the little fishing tackle boxes come in handy, with lots of little areas for all of your studs. And the other thing, if your studs, I've got a lot of them in here. I'm terrible at throwing things away. Just wanted to show you guys a couple. If your studs get super worn down, get rid of them. Here, if you want to pass a few of those around, just look at them. And the ones that are in that kit, there's a lot of brand new ones, and I don't care if those get lost. So they're worn down and yucky, and they're basically worthless. So you want to look for good, sharp studs when you're doing that. Yeah. Anything on your stud kit?
I actually just have a general question. Oh, so
Oh,
sorry.
go for it.
I am horrible at keeping that little brush that you use to clean. Like, I don't know what happens. It just looks like somebody in mud
Yeah.
all over it all the time.
No, I get it, because I think, I've got a couple of those too.
Is there, am I making this too difficult? Is there an easy way to clean it? Like, I've got my son's old toothbrushes and I'm like scrubbing it like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think probably your best, keep them plugged, and it's hard. I mean, I feel like my tools are the same way. I've got, a couple of brushes that, they do go. I don't think you're doing anything, they don't just don't last very long.
Okay.
I don't think you're doing anything wrong. It's
No, it's a little brush.
This
that
little
used to-
guy.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, they bend. They're a lot of times, even instead of using these, I'll just get a couple nails from the
Yeah,
farrier
or-
and use those to clean the
Okay.
stud.
Yeah, a
the
lot of
stud
times
holes
I'll just kind of, if I have, like, say I've lost a plug and I need to dig it out, I'll just dig it out with, like you're saying, 9 times out of 10 this is worthless. I'll just dig it out with the pointed end and then use my tap to try to get that.
Yeah.
Okay.
What'd you have?
What are stud plugs?
So when we're,
plug the holes.
so once you wanna keep your holes plugged. Cause you don't want dirt and stuff to get up in there, and we'll go over all,
Oh,
That'll get covered. Yeah, so that's just kind of a general list of the tools that you're gonna want. So you want a wrench, a tap, some kind of wire brushes for cleaning, WD-40, your stud plugs, and a nice little kit.
you can find the wrenches at that Home Depot.
Anything, yeah, cause you can save a
Just
lot of
small
money,
wrench.
just getting stuff, at like Home Depot or Walmart, like I'm saying, your
Same
kit.
thing with like
Your
these,
WD-40, yeah,
instead
there's,
of,
you go into the tool section, they've got little magnet, little
if you
magnets.
buy it at a horse store, it'll be twice as
Yeah,
much
just-
money.
Stuff you'll need to buy, at like a tack place would be like your plugs, your safety tap. This
What is that?
this little tool that we've all now just determined is worthless, and you can actually just use a farrier nail to dig out your stud hole. So, yeah. Cool. All right. So Natalie's gonna go through now how to put your studs in.
So like,
And if you guys wanna come
like we
closer to
were
see or anything.
saying, like you're gonna have your plugs in and you're gonna use something sharp to dig them out. It's a little hard when it's not attached to a horse. So you've got that out, and then before you're gonna put your stud in, which always like after the farrier comes, I would check and make sure they put stud plugs in, because some farriers do and some farriers don't. And if you get to a show and your stud holes are full of dirt and rocks and everything else, you're gonna add probably 20 minutes to getting everything out of your stud hole before you can even start to tap it. Then with your safety tap, you're gonna wanna make sure you're straight, and you're gonna just clean out the threads. You don't wanna go deep that it goes all the way into the horse's hoof. You just wanna go as far as it's gonna go nicely, and then take that back out. And again, these are perfect. They pull away from you, they step down, they're not gonna hurt themselves. They kick you, it's not gonna hurt you. And then studs, if we were putting in a stud, so then we're gonna screw it in a little bit with your fingers, kind of as well as it will, and then get your wrench. And you wanna tighten them, but you don't wanna tighten them so tight that, again, that you would be possibly going through past the shoe and then into their hoof, where you would give them like corns or a bruise or anything else. So it shouldn't wiggle, but it shouldn't be like jacked down there so tight, you're not gonna be able to get it out, or it's gonna hurt the horse. And then again, like as I'm putting studs in, and we'll go over like different types and what to put where later on, but like as you're putting studs in, you're always gonna put boot on that leg as you go. I teach all my horses to I can sit on like a little stool, put their front leg on my leg, do their front feet, same thing with their back feet, because I personally hate standing bent over for half an hour and kills my back, so I just teach them to stand well so I can do that.
And that's something you wanna practice a lot
Yeah.
at home. That's where you don't wanna go to an event the first time putting studs in your horses. They're excited and they're trying to kick you,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
teach them to just, my horses personally, they just rest their feet on the ground and they'll just
Yeah.
sit there and just do it real quick.
And same thing, taking it back out, you're gonna undo it after. You're going to clean out your threads again, because you just went through mud and everything else, and might as well have everything put back together well for the next time. And then you're gonna pop your stud plugs in. And you just wanna make sure you get it in there well so it doesn't immediately fall out. Mhm.
So these stud plugs, do they stay in for their turnout and everything? Do they
Mhm.
come out often, or they really usually
Some
stay in?
do, but most of them stay in. Like you might lose one every once in a while, but I don't usually lose a lot of them.
Okay, so they're not like every other day. I'm not like
Yeah.
out there.
Yeah.
No, I check them every once in a while.
The foam ones tend to
They
stay in
stay in
really
better.
well. The plastic ones will kind of fall out sometimes, but not too bad.
They're also easier to get in.
Yeah. Yeah, these you gotta work a little bit more on getting them in. The cotton ones usually don't come out, but they're really hard to get in, and they'll get more packed down where you'll sometimes have like little gravel or mud in there with them, so you're really digging the cotton ones out sometimes. But I personally like the foam a lot. And then get your studs out. You want to immediately clean them and not just throw them in your stud box and forget about them until next time, or they'll get all rusty.
'Cause
So-
we never do
Yeah. So I'll usually put mine on like a little towel, spray them off with some WD-40, use your little wire brush and try to clean them all out really well, and then wipe them off really well. And a lot of times I've ended up putting like a little bit of like, a little bit of WD-40 or oil in the little compartment that the studs sit into, just to keep them from getting rusty.
So like my clipper blades, they have to go in a bag too, or they get rusted. Are these kind of okay? Are these just covered, not like closed?
Yeah, you don't really have to have that done. I mean, they're always gonna get a little, like, they're not gonna look brand new after you use them once, but as long as you take good care of them, they're not gonna rust horribly.
Okay.
And for me personally, like when I get done, and I clean my studs out, what I do is keep, obviously I keep my WD-40 and I'll, brush the dirt off of my studs, and I also keep just a little plastic baggie, and then I'll throw my studs in the plastic bag, spray some WD-40 in it, and kind of shake them and rub them around so they're all really good, and then you're not getting it all over your hands because it wants to be greasy.
And then there's also studs that
Oh
like,
yeah, I don't have it.
I had them somewhere, but I don't have it. But like those are a little thing that you can throw your studs in and you like shake them around and then get them out and clean them off with a towel too. But WD-40 works just as well as buying the more expensive like made for it thing. I don't think it saves you that much
No.
time or
Again, you
effort.
can buy that stuff and it's
I want to make
expensive.
sure I'm not screwing myself up here. So when I take my studs out, I put them in a little container with baking soda and Dawn and shake them.
That'll work too,
Is
yeah.
that damaging them at all?
Mm-mm.
I
Okay.
don't think so, no.
No.
But I
I
would
think Dawn is
definitely-
gonna do good for anything.
But I would definitely
Lay 'em
still
out and
WD-40
spray
them afterwards,
Yeah.
just to keep them.
I dry
And then when
them.
they're, with the WD-40 and they're a little greased up, they're easier to get in and out of the stud holes
Yeah.
when you're using them, so.
Okay.
Cause I think when you're, when you're at an event or anything, and everybody's nervous and worried and in a hurry and all that, anything that just makes your life a little bit easier, is good, so, and that's same with keeping your studs organized and knowing which studs you're gonna use, which is kind of what we're getting into next. And that's again, as we're doing this, guys, they're using kind of that stud
too.
kit there that you can look at the different studs.
And like you end up with a lot of like, there's the main stuff you're gonna get that's kind of gonna be your all the time stuff. Having something like your plain roads that are just little is gonna be something you have a lot of. Having what I always call them like a pointy road or a raised road, that's another one that I use all the time. A lot of times, 9 times out of 10, these are your front studs, right? Like smaller on the inside, a little bit bigger on the outside. Mm-hmm.
They're called road studs, assuming you don't just use them for the road.
Yeah.
No.
That's just what they're called.
That's
Yeah.
it, they just have
Yeah,
a name.
Yeah. So they're just the little flat ones. But like these are basically for a lot of weather. This is what I'm gonna use
There's
up
a road
front
and a
almost all
pointed
the
road.
time.
Okay.
Inside and outside. You're always gonna have a little bit bigger on the outside than the inside. You're always gonna have a little bit bigger behind than in front because you don't want them to slam down on the ground and, jar themselves and hurt themselves.
So the fronts don't match.
No, nothing's ever gonna match usually. The inside's
Insides
almost
match,
always gonna.
outsides match, but.
Yeah, but
But not
like
one.
this would be your inside front, this would be your outside front.
So the
Because you're
ones that are
putting,
coming around, it's a
Yeah.
flat road and a pointed road, so the flat one would be what you would put on the inside, and the pointed one would be what you put on the outside.
and if it's, say, hard ground, like behind, I'm gonna put a grass tip on the outside, so something that's a little bit pointier, slightly bigger than that one, but a lot of times I'll use that on the hind if it's like harder ground. Just something that kind of grabs and just helps you not slip. If it were muddy ground, I'm gonna do something like this on the outside that's a little bit more of a bullet type. You could use something like this on the inside, or you could go to something that's a little bit more of a square on the inside because it's gonna dig in the mud more. So that's kind of going for what you
So this would be like
need.
your plain grass.
Sorry,
And
I
then I
know
would
your
use a
business
pointed
for a
road, so
second.
Oh, sure.
Get some
And
close
Sure.
ups, I guess.
And if it's super muddy outside, Like,
Yes, those are
I
for
have
hard
went to
ground.
something like
Yeah.
this on the outside up front, but very rarely would you go bigger than this on the outside up front. There's been a couple of times, like, when it was god-awful horrible weather and it's, you know, like 3-4 star events that I've done bigger than this, but anything usually prelim and below, I've never went any bigger than that on the outside up front. And then as you get, you know, like, get worse conditions, more mud, you're gonna go to that slightly bigger bullet on the outside and a slightly bigger block on the inside, stuff like that. So you're kind of playing in it. You never wanna go too big of a stud because you can risk injury, but you also don't wanna go too small and have them be slipping and losing
Okay.
confidence.
And these are both either behind or up front?
Yep, inside and outside.
And I always have these bigger grass tips that are quite big. I don't think I ever use the bigger grass
Yeah, I
tips
feel
for
like I
much
grabbed
of
one of those, like
anything.
that,
Yeah.
that's kind of going around, it is a little bit big, they're,
So that you can see
There
the
are
difference in
smaller.
where.
What did you say the grass tip was for?
Hard ground. So it's gonna be like a little bit of a like spike to grab the ground when it's hard, because the hard ground gets really slick, especially around the turns.
so you can pretty much figure, like, if the ground is really, really good, you can go with really kind of small
Small.
versions of whatever we're kind of talking about here, and as the ground stays, gets a little muddier, you go a little bigger, a little blockier, and if the ground is really hard, you go a little bit more pointy.
Yeah,
just so you have
like
your
quite
traction.
muddy, and you could be something bigger like that behind.
I think I've used something like that like once. So.
I use something like that up front at Jersey, but-
Yeah. You got your monsoon studs.
And then, you know, like quite muddy, I'm probably still not going bigger than something like that up front, right? Like you're never gonna go huge up front anyway, but it's a little bit, how bad is the footing? But you're normally always gonna use about that same, why don't we put some in
That's
there?
what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna do a tray of like, this is our general.
General,
Hard
yeah.
ground, general muddy.
Yeah,
So hard ground's pointy,
yeah,
and then muddy
'Cause you
is
want some-
blockier?
yeah.
Is the.
Blocky.
Blockier and like more of a bullet shape on the outside, because you're wanting something that's gonna dig in the mud and give you traction, where you want something more pointy, like, you know, like a cleat on a shoe for the hard ground, because you're slipping around the turns.
And then on the inside, it's pretty much just always gonna be kind of like the flatter.
Yeah.
Right, like outside behind in the mud, might have something like a little block,
So I'm
Okay.
gonna,
but up front, you're still not gonna have much on the inside.
Okay. And inside behind too, same thing.
Yeah, still smaller. If it's a harder ground, I'd probably put that same inside behind that I put on the outside of the front. And
Okay,
if it was muddier, I would put something like a block.
okay.
Because you want to grab the ground when it's hard, and when it's mud, you want something that gives you traction you can push off of.
Okay.
and if I'm ever, so if somebody comes up to me and they're like, oh, what studs do I use? This is also gonna be kind of how I set it up on a tray. So we'll pass this around. So this one would be like the ground's pretty good, but maybe a little bit muddy. And I'll set them up like this, like fronts and hinds. So outside, inside, and that way that's the horse. So that would be kind of a general, it's a little bit muddy, but no, your ground's pretty good. And then I'll set up one that's, maybe then a little harder ground.
Did you get the blocky for the mud?
That was a little
Yeah.
bit blocked, not very big, they're small.
You got grass tips
Yeah.
in your 4 pointed rows?
We have yours, Natalie, over
We
here
have a
too.
full collection that we've been photographing.
Oh,
Would
you're
you
good.
like them back?
Oh, no, you're fine.
We
You are totally fine. Yeah, it's like you end up with all these different studs, and I'll say you don't use them very often. You know, like all the
Yeah,
really
these
big
ones that I'm
stuff.
passing around
don't get
now
used a lot.
are, like those 4 and like these 4 are gonna be very typical.
I feel like that's, I just looked at all of the studs that I
Yeah,
used
like
this
all
year.
summer,
All
right?
summer,
Yeah, yeah.
Like, that's setup.
That setup.
Yeah, there's 2 setups here. You have like a hard ground setup, the muddy setup. And really, if it's much harder ground, you're still not going
You're
much
not going much bigger.
bigger. If it's muddier, you're going a little bit bigger on the outside front and a little bit bigger behind, but, you know, it takes a lot to go from like that behind to like that behind, right? 'Cause it's,
And then this is like basically all of July and August.
Yeah.
Hard ground. The other one going around is kind of more spring, fall, when it starts getting a little wet and muddy. But again, it needs to be pretty extreme one
To
way
go
or
much
the other
bigger.
to go bigger variations of those.
Would any of the questions on a course influence what studs you use? Not just the ground?
Pretty much just the ground, and sometimes like, you know, walk a course and it will, and we may vary like what studs we're gonna use when we walk the course maybe the night before and then realize like, we got some rain last night, I might, you know, let's see what the ground's like, see what it's like when you know, or go out if there's a spot on the course that's maybe a little questionable, like, see what the low areas feel like, and, you know, you might wanna go out and rewalk your course.
Well, the one thing I'd say as far as like if, about courses changing it slightly would be if, like the levels though, right? Like,
How fast are you
like
going?
how fast you're going, how many skinny and accuracy questions you have. So like, you know, prelim and intermediate, you might need a little bit bigger stud because all the horses gotta jump a lot in this little narrow face, where beginner, novice, and novice, if the footing's crappy in the middle, move a little bit left or right and give yourself better footing. And you're also not going that fast. So a lot of times the higher level horses are gonna have a little bit bigger stud in.
And the other thing too is, and like Natalie said, like, you know, varying it on the level that you're going. I mean, even if the ground is crappy, if you're going elementary, you don't need to put in a big old stud, you know,
You don't really even need
you don't
studs.
even need studs at all. I mean, and probably your horse is either barefoot or at least barefoot behind, and you don't need anything, and you're fine. And, you know, the more you're doing and the faster you're going is also gonna, yeah, range.
You would say after novice, then start using studs.
Yeah, it also depends on how sure-footed your horse is and how good their feet are. I mean, some horses move right up the levels barefoot all the way around, and that's just
Yeah, I've
as,
had
almost just
horses
as good as
go-
having studs.
yeah. I had a horse go training level with barefoot, and I only put shoes on him when I wanted studs for prelim. But then, like, it
Really
also
depends on the
had,
horse.
you know, I mean, most of our horses going beginner, novice, or novice probably only have front shoes, they don't have studs. But say that baby beginner, novice horse gets 4 shoes and he feels a little bit like he's slipping, I'm gonna give him stud holes then, but.
Or you might have, we've also had horses that are insanely sensitive to studs, and will bruise really easily on their heels. And some of those horses, and you like to hope that maybe they're a little more sure-footed and you don't need to either use a big stud or use studs at all, because they're really sensitive, to studs. So you also need to pay attention to your horse, because some horses won't tolerate studs. They can bruise really easily, and you need to really pay attention to that. And if that, or horses that have had like past tendon injuries, you don't want to go too big with the studs either.
Put extra pressure there.
You're,
Then there's other horses that are not really sure-footed that probably need studs a little bit earlier because they do slip around turns and lose some confidence and things like that. So it's a little bit knowing your horse too and what.
if your horse
what
is
helps
sliding
them.
around, they're gonna lose confidence and you don't want that, so.
Like Debbie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, yeah, really, you just gotta know your horse, and I don't know, do we wanna like pass around like the shoes with like maybe the tap and then maybe a couple of studs, something like that?
And the examples that you guys
I just
sent
wanna make sure
around,
I'm taking
you would also
an
use those
oriented
for like
photos, because I
dressage
leave
and
them.
stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah.
So people can.
Yeah, that
see
would be fine for
what's
all
up.
3 phases.
Yeah, or, and then the other thing too, a lot of times what I'll do is I'm a little unsure of the footing, you know, I might put in something, cause I always like to opt a little bit smaller for a stud, but sometimes I'll like, I might opt a little smaller and then go into dressage and be
I
like,
use right front.
ooh,
open
that was
toes,
slick.
right front, so which one's
I need more.
I mean, sometimes in events, especially if it's really muddy, the worst footing you're gonna have all day is in
In
dressage.
dressage, you're like, I can't wait to, and then people worry about going cross country and you're like, no, that was the worst footing. Cross country is great. So there's a shoe with, if you just wanna play with, a safety tap and, screwing a stud in and out.
Is there ever a time where you would only put shoes in front 4 or 9, not all 4?
The studs or shoes?
Studs, I'm sorry.
I don't personally, because to me that's like running with one cleat on.
Because
Because like I wouldn't want the front to grab and the hind end to slip, so they either have all 4 shoes with studs or they have no studs.
Okay.
And I know some people will do the, you know, oh, I've got 4 shoes, I'm only gonna stud behind.
Right.
Again,
But then again, your front end's slipping and your hind end's
or I
grabbing.
only have front shoes, so I'm only gonna put studs up front. Yeah, you're just, you're sliding all over the place. And
Is there ever a time that you would like just put studs on like the outside or just like the inside?
No, I would still always put something small on the inside.
yeah, because even if you're putting something small on the inside, I mean, even if you know, even if it's just a flat road, you know, it's hardly anything. Just
But it's just a
something.
little something for balance, right?
How many of each, so like for a single horse, how many of each stud would you suggest having?
So what
And
well,
so you have your
what I
more
always tell
common
people
ones.
to start out with is like, so like the plain road, that little flat plain road, I'm gonna tell people to get probably 6 to 8 of those. And then that pointy road, I usually say the same thing, get like 6 to 8.
Because those two, the flat road and the pointy road,
Are the ones
you're
you're
gonna
gonna
use
use
those
a
the
lot.
most, and they're gonna wear down quick.
And then something like the small grass tip, I'll usually tell people to get 4 to 6 of. And then that small bullet, I'll say get 4 to 6 of.
And that'll get you started.
And that'll get you started. Then we're like, okay, now you're ready to add on. We're gonna add on like 4 of the bigger bullet. We're gonna add on 4 of the bigger blocks. And just kind of slowly add on. But like that would be your main base that would get you through most everything.
Do you recommend, I know like Roma and a few other brands do the like stud kits, do you recommend those or do you feel like those, no?
No.
Cause I know like a couple of our students came in with like the one from Dover. And it like had literally like all
Like giant.
studs, and she's like, "What do I use?" And we're like, "None of those." Like, you
Let me
know?
get my stud
Yeah,
kit.
yeah. I think you're better off to just go
And cost
buy them a little
build
bit.
your own, you know,
Yeah.
and because really it's not that expensive to get started, and you get started right. And a lot of our students too will tell them, you go to an event, bring 15 or 20 bucks, and go
And just buy a couple each
buy a
time.
handful of
Yeah.
studs, and then add to it.
Yeah.
Oh, I lost a stud on cross country, add
Yeah.
to it. And then you slowly you have a giant heavy stud kit that you don't want to carry around.
Yeah. But yeah, the basic ones, those first basic ones, those are the like the 4 studs you're gonna use the most. And then adding a slightly bigger bullet, a little bit bigger square, that gets you going again. And then you might add in some different sizes of squares and maybe an even slightly bigger bullet, you know, but.
And then add in and then buy in ones that you lose and ones that
Yeah.
wear down quick and some, if I have some that are like maybe a little bit more worn, but I'm not quite ready to toss them, I might use those ones while I'm going to doing a trot set or a gallop set and saving my good ones for cross country or school. If I'm gonna have a hard school, I'll save my good ones for competition or harder school. But you know, some of the ones that are a little kind of worn down, I'll save those ones and wear those out.
Yeah.
While I'm doing any kind of like a conditioning set or something like that. So I think probably, one of the things that people have the hardest time with is which studs to use. And I think just a general rule of thumb, go small, and if the ground is hard, go pointy, and if the ground is muddy, go bullety, and then smaller on the inside, bigger on the outside.
And also, I would always say too, if you're at an event and you're not sure, ask a couple people what they're using. People will always tell you what they're using.
Yeah.
And because we've even sometimes said like you're gonna use this, and then someone comes back from cross country and says, oh, you know, the footing was actually worse than I thought. Go bigger, or the footing actually held up better. You might want to go a little smaller. Or
Definitely
you know,
ask.
people always tell you.
How many times we hit the trailer and neighbors, you know, we're always like, get out the stud kit, what's everybody using, you get back, how did it feel, you know? So use each other as a resource too.
Yeah, it was like that one year I was saying I put the biggest studs in my life in up front for Jersey Fresh, and I think it was like Buck came back like after his first go, it was like first on course, just came back and it was like mud to here. She's like, I don't know what you guys have in, but put in 5 times bigger. So we had like things that look like high heels on their front.
You get to the point that studs aren't even gonna do you any good. Any other? Yeah.
Should you try and avoid when they have studs in, does it create like enough of a, depending on how big the stud, of an imbalance that you should avoid like walking on hard surfaces or anything?
Not if you're not if you just gotta, you know, walk down a driveway or something, you're not putting a pounding on your horse. But vice versa though, I mean, if the ground is is say hard, you don't wanna put a
big stud.
big stud in, and then your horse is running around, you know.
Pounding their legs.
You want a stud that when you're going and they're going on the ground, that those studs are actually going into the ground and working for you and not putting added pressure on their heels or their tendons. Because I think one of the biggest mistakes people make is over studding.
Yeah.
So
Well,
that's how you
and-
hurt your horse.
And around here, like Carolyn's prime example, they'll aerate the ground really well. So you always have to look at that and see what the footing's like, because the ground might be rock hard, but they've aerated it really well, and you really don't need much because they've softened the ground.
You might think the ground is concrete, but actually out on course, it's not. And as horses run on it, they churn it up even a little bit more, and can almost be better than on the footing.
And that could go this other way when it's muddy, that if you run at the end of the day, might need bigger studs because everybody's churned the mud up a lot worse. So you always have to kind of check before you're gonna go on course and make sure it hasn't changed that much from when you walked it. Again, ask.
And another thing, just reiterate, I know Natalie said it earlier, but now that we're talking, about the studs and everything, if you do stud for, just to say again, if you do stud for dressage, and then after dressage before show jump, check their feet that they didn't lose one. And then again, after you show jump, check, have somebody or even if you're just walking away from somebody, can you peek at my horse's feet like that they have all their studs in? Because that, you lose them. They do come out. Then, yeah.
Okay, any other questions? Yes.
Since I'm newer to studs, what do you guys mean by outside and inside?
Outside of the hoof versus the inside of the hoof. So like you're always gonna put that.
Medial, radial.
Yeah. So like the inside's always gonna be a little bit smaller than the outside. And then behind is gonna be a little bit bigger than the front. Cause you don't want them to land with a ton, but you want them to be able to push with a ton, right? You don't want it to be jarring on their front legs landing. Anything else with that?
Is more likely to lose shoes or no, same?
I don't think anybody's more likely to lose shoes, but I mean, just going cross country in general, I'll usually put bell boots on most horses. Just because if they are, the faster they're galloping, the more they're overreaching, the more the chance of grabbing that front shoe.
And the other thing with your bell boots too, you want to make sure that you have good bell boots. A lot of your good no turn bell boots that have a little bit more padding on the back. Not that they don't turn. They always come back and they're backwards. But those no turn bell boots that have a little bit more padding on the back, because you don't want them reaching forward and studding themselves.
Yeah, those heel
on
grabs
heels,
take a long time
They
to
take
heal.
a long time to heal. So make sure you got good boots all around for your horses. And same too, like your cross country boots, that you're not just using the little, neoprene wolf boots, because a stud will slice right through those. You want good
More protection.
boots with good guards on them, because studs will cut through your lighter weight boots. And I've personally had horses too, I know some horses have a hard time with those heavier weighted boots, especially your more sensitive type horses, and they'll get rubs from your heavier, chunkier boots. And I've had luck using the socks. They're like the silver socks that you can slide on their legs. Do your boots over the top of those to help keep from rubbing, so you don't use a boot don't use a boot that's not safe when you're studying. There's ways to get around that.
Question on the bell boots. So is there more danger in your mind with the neoprene type of bell boots with a stud actually getting stuck in the boot itself and causing the horse's leg not to come off the ground than the old original pull-on rubbers?
I'll use both. I don't mind one way or the other. I still have plenty that go in the rubber ones too, but I'll usually be lazy and do the Velcro and versus pulling them on. but we do have Amigo wears the full-on bell boots, and
But there are different. You talk about the rubber ones. There are rubber bell boots that are they're good. They're thicker and more well made. And then there's your little cheapies that
they're just gonna pull
they're
off
not doing
themselves,
anything.
yeah.
My question was about with the stronger, heavier bell boots, especially the fabrics,
Yeah.
about the stud itself getting stuck in the boot.
I've never had a horse
You've never had
do
a horse do
that, but I mean, anything's possible because horses are going to do anything dumb they possibly can. But yeah,
Yeah, every time I put on a nylon belt boot, I'm gonna think about that.
yeah, I haven't ever had
Yeah,
one
don't
do
think-
that, but yeah, I use both types kind of just depending on the horse. Because I've had some that like the rubber, they're too sensitive and the rubber gives them
The rubber
rubs.
rub
and,
on them.
And then I hate using the fleece. They'll use
Oh,
fleece
yeah.
line for turnout, but you're not going to use that cross country. So then they'll have the neoprene ones just because they get rubs too bad. But otherwise, I use the rubber.
Glue-ons can be tapped for studs.
Mhm.
It doesn't change what type of
Nope.
stud you use.
No. Had a lot of those.
Yeah, the
That was a good
glue-ons
question.
too, like the ones that are the Sigafus that have the cuffs, like those actually, I think, are easier to tap because they're on so secure.
We also have
Well,
one.
I mean, horses that I have seen, we have had a horse that could pull the shoe off and leave the cuff on, but. But yeah, we've never had any problems with it.
There was also that brand, there was ones that we were using on Sunny for, they're called glue shoes. And
Oh,
they're like
yeah.
a rubber, it's a shoe, it's an actual shoe, and they come like if the farrier orders them, they come already tapped for studs.
Yeah.
And it's an actual shoe, but then it's coated in rubber, and then the cuff that comes up is rubber, and then they glue that cuff, it's like a rubber cuff that gets glued on. Those work pretty well,
Mhm.
for like a really sensitive horse.
If sensitivity is not an issue, do you have a recommendation for leg protection for a larger boned horse? Cause I find that,
The boots.
yeah, like the tendon boots and stuff, I can't find the hind boots big enough that are not wolf boots.
Right.
That go around his trunk of a leg.
I'm trying to think which.
He's a land hippo.
Yeah.
Get it?
Heather, you have a Cleveland Bay, right? Heather, is
And I'm terrified to order those, cause like what if
Which
they
ones?
don't work?
The PEI one?
Yeah,
those
because
are
that's what
good.
was on Juno. Those were big.
I have a
Yeah, 'cause
big
she's got a big
17
mare.
and warm blood, and she's quite big boned.
I
and
would classify her as land hippo as well.
Yeah, she's pretty land. Yeah, she is pregnant right now.
So she's really good.
She's on stall rest, so she has a food baby in there. But
She has a food.
and I think there was even one more size up that I could have.
Yeah, because those
Yeah.
PEIs, especially the hinds, are
Quite
and the
big.
straps on them are quite big too.
Okay.
But they're also really tall.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they're very
that's what I
tall
liked
and the
about them.
straps are very long.
It's because even if I got something that would go all the way around, it would be too short.
Not your size.
But I do.
Yeah, but that's a good brand for
Yeah,
that.
and those held up. I actually bought those with Juno, and they held up for.
Yeah,
a
they're expensive,
long
but they do last a
They do
really long
last.
time.
Those straps workers.
Because normally I'll use either
Okay.
the Magic Equip or the Trizone. I like the Trizone, the Equilibrium ones a lot. Because those are so lightweight.
This is a better picture in terms of scale of size.
You see, he's not real tall.
She's like this.
And they definitely have a couple of different sizes, so I think you could, they're wide around, but they also have a taller or a little bit short. So I think those would work really well.
Yeah.
I'd be like those.
Because like the other ones, like the Trizone and the Magic Equip are all quite short.
Yeah, that I ordered the equips and I was like, well, that's gonna.
Yeah, they're quite
Just
short.
fell.
They fit the thoroughbreds we have really well, but they're
Right.
quite short, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
She's wearing that in this
Oh, and this was Carolyn's stuff too. She's got a couple of free clinics coming up. One with Steven that's like a unmounted intro to eventing, and a nutrition one a week from Monday too. So she said for everybody take stuff back to their barns and everything too.
What about stud garters? Do you,
I have never felt the need to use one ever.
like, it's like if they tuck or I guess if they fall, but it's
Yeah.
like some people use them, I mean,
I have a couple of them, but I don't use them. I think Voltaire just gave them to us, so. But they just sit in my attack room,
Yeah.
but I have not ever felt the need to use them really.
I guess it depends too, like horse jumps or.
Right,
whatever,
right,
like that
yeah,
kind of
right,
thing,
Right,
but-
right.
I feel like the jumper riders need those a lot more than the eventers usually
Yeah.
do.
I was just thinking in it, and I'm like, well, if she like trips or falls or something, I'm like, oh, that might
It might help in that,
like
yeah.
part, but
I think it's also too, like those you kind of also have to see how your horse goes in them, because I think some of the horses don't like that really big thing there. So it's a little bit like, what does the horse like?
and some of them do kind of hang.
And they're pretty
Like
heavy,
the-
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's more personal preference on the way your horse jumps. Any other questions?
So we just, like, the last thing we were just gonna try to get into was, making plans with your farrier. And, planning, you know, obviously everybody's plans change, but to have kind of a plan as to what events you're doing, when you're doing them, and keeping your farrier in the loop. They do appreciate that. Not, oh, my horse is due and, you know, can you get them done real quick before an event or,
Well, and both things with that, like, you don't want your horse, you know, your farrier coming on a Thursday or Friday and you're planning to event Saturday. Well, I don't like to
Yeah.
do my horse and then run right after that, because what if they hit him with a nail? What if they're a little short? But then on the other side of that, you don't want your horse to have to go to the following week and run on long toes and put the extra stress on their tendons and ligaments. So just having that farrier in the loop so you can get your shoes done like a week before your event, if you can.
because when they trim, I mean, no matter, even if it's good and they're fine and they're not sore or anything, you know, they do take off, you know, a bit of foot, and all of a sudden you have to go run on hard ground or in mud and their feet get soft or whatever, you just run the risk that they're gonna bruise a little bit easier, and, you know, you don't want them to hurt themselves. And the other thing is, after your horse does get done, it might seem really dumb, but check all of your shoes. Because farriers are humans and they do make mistakes, and we've had times where you get to an event and all of a sudden you go to screw a stud in and, oh my god, my farrier forgot to thread the stud holes. Then your stud holes are worthless. Or you pick up a foot and you're like, oh my god, I have no stud holes on this shoe. To go through all your shoes after your horse is done and check all your shoes, check all that they have 8 stud holes and all those stud holes are threaded. And the other thing to do is right after they're done is to make sure you plug your stud holes. Some farriers will do it for you, or they'll do it if you maybe leave them stud plugs and ask them to do it if you're not gonna be right around, but you wanna make sure your stud holes get plugged as soon as they get done. And it just protects your horse's heels, it protects the stud holes, it protects your threads. So you wanna just make sure that that gets done right when your horse has their feet done. Oh, and the other one is if you're, say if your farrier, you say you've got a old set of shoes on that are already tapped for studs and they're a little bit worn out, like these ones are. When your farrier is going to make you new shoes, put a new set on your horse, save the old ones for spares and have them with you at the event. So if your horse loses a shoe, you're not having to frantically look for a shoe, or the farrier at the event doesn't have to make you a shoe and charge you an arm and a leg for it. You can come to them with a spare and they can put that on your horse. And generally, like when you have a set of spares, if I have a set of 4 spares, you can usually tell by the shape of the shoe, well, these ones are the fronts and these ones are the hinds. And the other thing a farrier will do is on the outside of the shoe, they'll put a little notch on that shoe so you know whether it's a left or a right shoe. So you can go into your studs and, oh, I lost my left front. You can pull out the right shoe and take it to the farrier, and they can just easy tack
Save
a
you
shoe
a lot
on
of
for you.
time at an event.
And a lot of money. Yeah. They charge you a lot if they gotta make you a shoe.
Yeah.
And then you're also not out walking around
Well, you
looking
might-
for the shoe that you've lost.
Yeah.
So
Not
keeping a
missing
set
the
of
right time.
spares. And try to just keep like your most recent set of spares. Cause usually a shoe, the farrier will make you a new set of shoes. They'll maybe reset it once and then toss them and make you a new one. So just every time there's a set of shoes coming off, keep those as your new set of spares. And then next thing you know, you're going to an event and you've got like 12 spares.
At the end of the event season, you're throwing all
Am I
those out.
riding a caterpillar?
I think that's all we have, if anybody else has any questions.
So I guess for us personally, my mare's gonna do novice, And I was like, oh, well, it's a little bigger, but it's sounding like I don't have to do this, because she doesn't slide around. So it's sounding like I don't have to do this with myself this year. Is that?
Like for me, it depends at novice. Like if they have 4 shoes, I'm probably gonna go ahead and put the 4 stud hole.
Yeah,
like
she
4
wears 2, so
Yeah.
I mean,
So if she stays in
If
2
she's-
shoes and she doesn't need it, just go do novice with the 2 shoes
Yeah.
and wait. Like they'll kind of tell you when they need the hind shoes and when, but as soon as you put the hind shoes on, I would do all stud holes.
yes.
And you'll know too, like even if like say you're going novice and say, oh, here I'm starting to school training, you know, and if you start to ever feel them lose, you know, a little slip and lose a little bit of confidence, don't hesitate to just do it, you know. So, but again, some horses are super sure-footed and they never, you know,
Yeah.
they never need them. You know, you can go around with, you know, 2 fronts or all barefoot and
And be fine.
they're fine.
Yeah, she'll kind of tell you. And you know, if you start doing more and her hind feet are wearing down, and the farrier says, "Oh, we need to start putting hind shoes on her." Okay, well now I'll just go ahead and add the stud holes.
Yeah, whether it's for their feet or for their traction, you know. But your horse will tell you.
Yeah, I've had some that don't need them till training, and I've had a couple that I did put studs on till prelim, and I've had others that needed a beginner novice, so it's a little bit horse dependent.
Yeah.
And I think some of the horses too, it also depends on the rider too. I mean, if you have a horse that's, you know, maybe going around, you know, beginner, novice, and novice, and maybe the rider's not helping them too much, you know, and that horse needs a little bit more help, you know, from
Balancing itself, yeah.
Balancing itself when, you know, you don't, you know, because there are different types of riders too. I mean, you
I
have
can't
somebody
say
who.
we're really helping her.
Well, then she's doing great. But, you know, yeah. Because, you know, a lot of times you're going around and if your horse is even studded too, I mean, if you're going around and your horse slips and you're going around a turn or something and you made a dumb turn, well, that's on you, you know. Don't go too fast around a turn. Because even with studs, you know, it helps, but they do slip. So you do have to, you know, be very conscious that your horse stays on 4 tires and don't go motorcycling around turns, because studs are only going to do so much. Don't think like, oh, I got studs in, I can go really fast now.
It's like people that think they can drive in the snow and ice because they
Yeah,
have
right.
to drive, right? You have a question, Courtney?
So if you're just like starting out
Mm-hmm.
and you don't know how your horse does out cross country, but they have 4 shoes and they need 4 shoes, should you get them studded?
I would wait and see how she schools, right?
Yeah.
Like if
Or
she's
the other thing
schooling
is-
confidently and feels like she's good, don't bother.
Right. Or the other thing you can do too is when she gets, you know, say reset or gets a new set of shoes, have them tapped for stud plug or for studs, and then feel her out, you know. And she might be one that, you know, while she's doing little stuff, you know, she might only need little tiny little studs to help. But you also don't want to take a, you know, like I know your horse, like she wants to go out and be really confident and go, you know. So you also don't want to risk her losing that confidence,
Right.
because she doesn't have, you know, because she's sliding around out there. So just, you know, I would, next time she gets done, be prepped, you know, for spring, that she has stud
Yeah.
holes, so you have the option.
Because right now you're only schooling on the Derby course, so it's
Yeah.
not like it matters. But yeah, springtime you're probably gonna want.
I would have them, so you have them in case you want them, and not be like, now I
For
gotta
the
wait.
extra 20
Now I
bucks,
gotta wait
it's-
6 weeks to
No.
Yeah,
get
that's my
them.
question. How much, not that it really matters, how much do they charge?
Usually like around $20 extra to just tap them.
Okay, so not
Yeah.
much.
Yeah.
You know, it's your initial
I'd say
investment
you're under
into,
$50.
into buying your basic stud kit is your most expensive investment, but the actually doing your stud holes is not. Yeah.
And two, when you're studying and you're at an event, one of my other main points is time management too. Don't think it only takes you like, especially when you're new at it.
It's gonna take you a while.
Don't be like, oh, it'll take me 10 minutes to put my studs in. And then all of a sudden you're rushing and you're stressed out, and give yourself, I mean, it's one of the first things I do. I get to, even me, I mean, I know it takes me 10 minutes to stud, but still I'll get to an event and I pull my horse out, I stud him, I boot him, it's done, I put him back in the trailer. And they can chill and wait, and I'm not rushing if something goes wrong or whatever. So lots of time management. You also don't want to studding at an event sucks when it's like 110 degrees.
You're under there forever.
And you're under them and you're sweating your butt off and yeah, take your time doing it. And be fair to your horse and train them, show them, what you're doing and that it's fine, because you see so many people at events trying to stud their horses and their horses are fussy and then kicking and they're upset with them and that's just no way to start your day. Right? Teach your horse how to stand and get studs in and out and be relaxed with it and do that at home. And you don't want to start your day all stressed out at an event or before a cross country school or something like that. Any other thoughts? Did we miss anything?
I don't think so. I think that's everything we had.
Thank you so much, ladies. This was fabulous. Thank you.